Hi, Misha here, and today we have something old new from Hobbymaster. This is their rendition of a World War II German Junkers Ju-87G-1 Stuka. This is the close support ground attack version. And Hobbymaster has done these before on 172 scale diecast, but it's been quite a while. A year or two ago, Akins found one of these older issues and put it on their kind of last chance list around Christmas, and I nearly bought it. But since it was at that time an out of production thing, they wanted pretty good money for it, around 100, 120 bucks. So I didn't, and it sold. And I wondered if I would regret it. But then last year, Hobbymaster announced they were doing a new 87D and a new 87G. And finally they came in May of 2022. And these are purely die cast. Very little plastic on them. They do come with the typical Hobbymaster stand, but you're just as likely to display them on their wheels. Pretty neat. Now the G variant was really the last variant to be produced and fielded. Of course, the Stuka dates all the way back to the 1930s and started off as a dive bomber and earned its wings in the Spanish Civil War. And it was used extensively during the invasion of Poland and events in France in 1940. And then used to harass shipping. It was even used to bomb England. Those were the early A's and B's, and they gave way to the R variant, which was a long-range version of the B. The first major update was with the Ju-87D, which had added armor, better capabilities, and it's actually from the D, which was already kind of being designed as a close support version, ground attack version, that we get the G here. And in 1942, this notion came to be. Now, the Stuka was never a super fast aircraft. Again, it was a dive bomber. But by the standards of mid-war, it was quite slow. The fastest versions were only about 220 miles per hour in level flight, and cruised well under 150 miles per hour. And they carried various bombs, including a 550-pounder under the fuselage in the center, and then a handful of 110-pound bombs under the wings. So what they did for the G, they replaced the wing bombs with gun pods, cannon pods. And these were to come in and strafe and attack tanks. And the idea was they could go for the sides or the rear where armor was weaker, lighter, and then zip away. At first they thought about doing 20mm cannon, but while that would have been insufficient to attack early war tanks, by mid-war it just wasn't enough. So they started experimenting with 37mm guns, or as the Germans would have called them, 3.7 centimeter guns, and they ultimately settled on a flak gun that was a rapid-firing auto-loading cannon, and they mounted them under the wings. Interestingly, they're both interchangeable. Left can go on right, right can go on left. And each gun held six rounds. Now these things on the sides look like fins. They're not. They're actually magazine clips, as they call them. Each clip holds 6 rounds to feed the cannon, so a total of 24. And the guns were usually synchronized, where when they pulled the trigger, each gun would fire once, meaning that the pilots effectively had 12 shots to try to bust some tanks. Now, during the conversion from D to G, they would remove a lot of the dive bombing equipment. The G1 here retains the flaps themselves, but lacks they're basically fixed in position. They would also remove the guns mounted in the wings. They would retain the rear machine gun position, and most would have a double-barreled MG-81Z, which was a faster firing, higher magazine capacity 8mm machine gun. So that was the only defense. In the front, didn't have much of anything. In fact, the JU 87G, sorry, tripped on my cord a little bit there, really could not defend itself in the air at all. And it was even slower because these guns weighed over 800 pounds each. And as you can imagine, had a good bit of drag. So top speed was about 190, 195 miles per hour with a cruise speed of about 120 miles per hour. So they needed defending. Testing would go on through 1942. By the end of the year, they had the design ready to go, and the first prototype would fly in January of 1943, and by April, these were starting to be deployed. Mostly all, I guess, really to the Eastern Front. And these really weren't new construction aircraft, they were rebuilds. The G1s were from D3s, and the G2s were from the D5s, which had a little bit longer wingspan. The big combat debut came with the Battle of Kursk in July of 1943, where these were used for tank busting, because that was a big tank battle. And after that, later in the year, pretty much all the original dive bombing Stukas were gone, and so the only ones remaining on the Eastern Front were ground attack close support versions. And if they had air support, or if there was no enemy aircraft to challenge them, they were quite deadly to tanks. They would continue through 1944, but already by that spring the decision had been made to cancel further Ju-87 production. So through the rest of the year they would assemble planes from leftover spare parts or rebuild damaged planes and get them back out. So, yeah. And at this point, these are used to just attack Russian armor columns and convoys. They did see some use in December and January, and they had a major push in February of 1945 that did delay the Red Army taking Berlin, but it was simply a delaying action. By this point, there's only about 100 left operational, and after the operation in February, they pretty much used up all the fuel and resources, and they really didn't have the wherewithal to keep flying these. A few still continue to fly in March and April, but that was kind of the last major hoorah for this plane. But it's a neat model, that's for sure. And I do like that it is very heavy metal. Take it off here. The wings are metal. The tail is metal. It does not come with pilots. I just stuck a couple of guys in there. The canopy is removable. The propeller does move. When you get it, it's fully assembled, except it doesn't have the gun pods. They're just pegged in really easy. You can have them on or off, and to be fair, on the original plane they were removable. Even the wheels move. Pretty neat. Not the rear, just the front too. But the kind of Wolverine looking spads. So you can put it on the stand if you like. I think I've even tried to put this one on the stand. Or you can just sit it on the wheels, which kind of seems more logical. But it's a neat variant, and I like the fact that it saw a lot of use in the Eastern Front. And I like that I ultimately did end up paying over $100 for one from Aikens years ago. Glad they re-released it. Like I said, they also re-released a D3 bombing variant, if you want one of those. But I wanted the tank killer variant. And the 87G is also famous because it would directly influence later planes like the Su-25 in Russia, the Frogfoot, and even more famously, the A-10 Warthog in America. So its place in history is quite assured. And it's a neat model. So I just wanted to share it with you quickly today. Let me know what you think. And if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. This is Misha. Catch you very soon. Next time.